it starts with a lot of education and training, and kind of understanding as to what the platform can and can't do. Out of the box, the way we see it is we build a platform with empathy for our developers. If a developer can cause a systematic break, it's the fault of the platform, not the developer.
Welcome to the Forward Slash. I'm your host, Aaron Chesney, with my beautiful co-host, James Carmen. Today, we're going to be talking about platform engineering, what it is, what it's for, and our special guest who's well-versed in the subject, Joel Vasallo. Joel is a Senior Director of Platform Engineering at TAG, and I don't mean the playground recess game that everybody plays. It's the Aspen Group. There he covers cloud, DevOps, delivery, and SRE strategy. Also a Google developer group organizer for Chicago, running monthly meetups and events to help grow the Chicago tech scene. Welcome to the podcast, Joel.
Thanks for having me, Aaron. Thanks for having me, James. Happy to be here.
So, Joel, to let us know a little bit more about you, why don't you give us two truths and a lie? We'll see if we can't guess which one the truth is.
All right, let's see. Here we go. This
Or
will be
the
fun.
lie is,
I always think of these. So let's see if we get them. I've broken multiple limbs at concerts. I've run kubectl against a production system from my laptop before. Or I work out every day.
Well, I know which one's the lie about me.
Yeah, same.
Actually, I think all three of those are a lie about me. So.
Oh, I've definitely done the second one. Sometimes you gotta.
Yeah. I don't know, James. Which one do you think the lie is?
Well, I don't know. That's a tough one. Breaking limbs at a concert sounds a little crazy. Like that sounds far fetched, but I don't know. I don't know Joel very well, so maybe that could be. I don't know. Maybe we leave it as a mystery to
when I'm
audience.
not Kubernetesing it. I'm throwing it down in the mosh pit. Is basically what I'm
throwing down. That's right. Or, I mean, if you said I got my limbs broken because I ran kubectl on a production cluster,
that could be
real.
Yeah,
I believe that.
That might be.
I mean, I've done some crazy things in a production system before, so I'm definitely thinking that the kubectl thing is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
We're all info people. We know.
Yeah, that's not that far of a reach. So I'm between the broken limbs at a concert. I mean, mosh pitting, that's pretty violent. I could see that. Working out every day, that's a lot of dedication. I mean, my son works out a lot, and it's not every day, but once he goes to that third day, he's like, I got to get to the gym. I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't know how you're my kid, but so I think I'm gonna go with the workout every day as the lie.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're actually right. I don't work every day. There's a thing called rest days. So
that's right.
And if I did, I wouldn't be able to kubectl off my laptop every day. So,
so Joel, it was mentioned in your intro that your SRE is part of your title, so or as part of what you do. What is SRE? Explain that a bit.
Yeah, it's a pretty it started kind of Google's book on SRE. I mean, I always recommend people new to this space to kind of check that out. But basically, SRE, fundamentally speaking, to me, is your monitoring, your alerting, and your ultimate incident management strategy. So think about it: things break all the time, right? But all that really matters is how you respond to it. Do you have a workaround? Do you know how to visualize the impact and also the recovery? Oftentimes when things break, we say, "Hey, we got to fix." We roll it out. Is it really fixed? Is it still down? The SRE team that we kind of oversee and my teams oversee really focus on incident management as well as basically are kind of the arbiters of our infrastructure. They kind of have a pulse on everything that kind of goes down. They work hand in hand with our application owners, whether it be something as simple as Microsoft Teams or something as complex as a database and an application stack. They basically work to find out how we can monitor systems as well. Sometimes it's hard to think about that. Um, but it's definitely a lot of work, but it's very, very, very cool to see once you have it implemented.
So what does SRE stand for?
Yeah, site reliability engineering. So
Okay. I was
kind
off.
of keeping an eye.
I was thinking system recovery something or system recovery engineering, so I was off a little bit.
You're not off the mindset because half the time you're recovering something if you're an SRE engineer. But no, yeah, I mean, there's a whole established principle around like metrics and monitoring, but even like response times. We hear things like what's your SLA and what's your SLO and how long are you up and down for, right? I mean, many of us in the industry, we hold our vendors and we even hold ourselves to these numbers, right? We're 5 nines. Well, does everyone understand what that actually means in terms of how long you can actually be down? So I think
In
that's
in
something.
the 5 nines is 5 nines past the decimal point, right? So it's 99.99.
No, it's just
No,
it's all the
all
All
five.
nines in.
Oh, so it's
Yeah,
99.999.
99.999% of
yeah.
the time up.
So if you
Yeah.
say you're 5 nines, you should expect less than 6 minutes of downtime over a course of a year. So easy to say, but as all of us know, hard to do. Right?
That's a tough one.
That's a tough
Yeah,
one.
I don't think people realize, the time frame that means to get when you add just another nine. Because I know it was like we talked about like, okay, we want to be 3 nines, 4 nines, and every time you add a nine, that time gets so small, it's ridiculous. It used to be well, we could be back up in a day. It's like,
When are the next Olympics? We'll
right,
be
yeah.
back by then. Yeah.
Or I remember we used to do like full day shutdowns for, service changeovers and stuff like that. It was like, okay, well, we're gonna have a maintenance window of, from 6 to 6 so that we can get our stuff done.
Well, I mean, it's a sign of maturity in the technology that we use. We are dependent on it. I mean, even our cars need it. Our microwave. I saw someone's fridge needing a software update the other day over the holidays. I was like, your fridge needs an
Yep,
update. It's like,
yep. I
so
have
it's
one of those
just
smart fridges that it will update. I'll hear it update itself every now and then. I'll hear the little chimey thing as it boots back up.
this is awesome.
It basically comes down to anything that connects to your wireless network has the ability to self-update now. So it's kind of strange. It's weird. We've talked about like the personal assistant things with like I'm gonna set off everybody's stuff with like Siri and Alexa and all that stuff
Hmm.
and in Google, and it's it's weird sometimes how they'll just go off on their own. Like we've been having a conversation in the room and Alexa just butts in and it's like we're not talking to you, Alexa.
But maybe you
Sorry.
want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very interesting. So with now with the monitoring, obviously that's part of the DevOps flow, right? That last part is the monitoring and feedback that feeds back into the development cycles. How does that map with like platform delivery and your cloud teams and all that? Like how do you integrate all that stuff in?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of to the flow that you talked about with DevOps, right, as a whole. It's part of that experience, and it kind of goes to what really a platform is. A lot of us in the industry nowadays like say, "Oh, we're platform engineering, so that must mean you must run a backstage or a port or a cortex or something." That's just a means to an end, right? Like that's a tool and a platform for visibility, but really a platform is what you build for your internal teams or your developers to kind of give them that warm and fuzzies, right? Like think about it like as you start your first development job, right? You got to set up your laptop, you got to set up your Git repos, you got to set up all this stuff. Really, if your platform is built with developers in mind, day one, they should have everything that they need to kind of get started, right? How do I make a repo? The platform can help you with that. Oh, cool. How do I update an existing repo? The platform should be able to help you with that. I want to increase the memory of my and memory and CPU on my deployment. The platform should be able to help you with that somehow. So kind of bringing all that into the flow and kind of tying SMEs and the subject matter experts into it. If you build like a stable platform, everyone can kind of influence different components of it. It's kind of how we try to do it.
Yeah, and I actually do as part of our onboarding at Caliberty, I do a talk on DevOps, and a lot of the misconceptions is that it's a person that goes out and gives you all the tools and does deployments and that kind of stuff, and it's like CI/CD and all this stuff, and it's like, no, DevOps is it's a mindset, right? It's dev and operations put together. You should be able to take your code from inception to running on a system in an environment that is integrated with the 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 whole the whole story, right? It's like your chapter fits in the whole story. And you can see it running, and then you can monitor it and get your feedback, and all done as a personal mindset. It's like your job doesn't end when you check your code in and it builds, right?
Amen.
Right. It has to run. And it has to run in environment. So
Somebody else takes care of that, Aaron. We have other people for that. And
yeah,
they
that
destroy
was
your
the old. I
garbage.
mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the way it used to be for
Oh, I
us. I
do.
mean, it
Yeah.
used to be that you had developers and you had operations, and you had to make really good friends with the people that had root password, right? Because that was the only way that you were going to get your stuff fixed.
Sure.
But it ran on
Um,
my laptop.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
works on my
I mean,
machine.
that's where it runs on my machine. You know,
Hmm.
that was the phrase, right? Well, it ran on my machine. Well, the systems are pristine. Well, I don't know what to tell you.
And then, hey, my container ran locally.
Hmm.
Oh yeah,
That's
right.
where it got to now.
That's
uh,
the newer version, right?
Exactly.
yeah.
It
Works on
ran in
my
my
Docker.
container.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like in all seriousness, like I mean that in itself drives kind of the conversation, right? What is the contract to get onto a platform? And really, for us, kind of joking about it is you have to have a working container. For us, that's like our bare minimum. Like for majority of our workloads, you have to have a container that runs and runs locally, and also has configurations to run in given environments, being it stage, prod, dev, whatever. And that's kind of like our contract to developers. So for them, they see a lot of freedom. Hey, I want to write a Go app. You can. I would encourage you as development leads to consider how you maintain Go because we've never done it before. But majority of our stuff is .NET and Python or something like that, right? So we give people like the prescribed golden paths. But if people need a business reason to go and forge their path, there may be a valid reason. Hey, this tool that we have to buy only works with Go or only works with, gosh, like something like PHP. I was kind of dating myself that, but like in reality, it's really what's necessary for the business. You know, who are we to dictate what we can and can't do? If we're building a platform, we don't care. It's a means to an end.
Well, and I like that division of, okay, give us a container, you know, and that's your way in, because that kind of does open up the doors to, I really don't care what you use to populate your container. As long as it runs in that container, we can get it deployed and out onto environments, right? So I could write it in BASIC, and put it in a container, and as long as I have my port in and my outgoing port, and it's able to communicate. I don't know how you would do networking on BASIC. That's a that's a
You
head
would use
scratcher.
standard in and standard out.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah, you would. Um,
You run a tunnel or something like an IP,
Yeah, you'd have to write like a
SSH
like a
tunnel.
little. Oh boy, Yee.
Yeah, yeah. No, but I mean, like
We'll put flat files in an S3 bucket.
yeah. Oh gosh. I mentioned it earlier, but I mean, in reality, like, yeah, and I know for the folks listening, like, it's like, oh my gosh, just raw containers out in the world. Well, no, it's all part of the platform. Your security teams, your quality teams should have checkpoints in there. For example, it's not uncommon for our security team to say, hey, you're using an unsupported container or release version. Now, with that, everyone has to understand it's kind of going back to the concept of operations. You have to have supported modules and what you support. Hey, you're trying to use a version of PHP that isn't supported. Why do you need it? get security approval. Okay, understand we have this tool legacy. We're going to be moving to it in 3 months. Okay, got it. You got to do an emergency patch. All right, makes sense. We'll take the risk. But at a certain time, maybe the answer is no. You can't use that version of Go. Why can't you upgrade? Oh, I really don't want to test. I got to get this out the door quick. No, sorry. Please update to the version of Go that we require, and you'll move forward. And oftentimes it's nothing burger, right? It's just other than like, oh, update the container image and stuff. But yeah,
So it's
Yeah,
it's
and
interesting that the like, I don't know, we've kind of talked about this topic a couple times on the podcast. Like the whole notion of like you build it, you run it, like that back in the day, that was like the whole DevOps revolution was, you build it, you run it. And it seemed like there was almost like this, you know, we embraced it at first from the developer side, and that became like that's the nirvana that you want to do it. But then you started to see kind of a retraction of that, right? The pendulum swinging the other direction, where the developers like, man, I got into development because I wanted to develop. So it feels like that's where these like platforms are starting to come in. Is it's like, okay, all those things that you need to do to build to run it, we're going to put that behind this platform, or build a platform that supports all those things and lets you get back to doing what you love, which is developing software. So I don't know. It's just an interesting how that pendulum kind of just swings back and forth to these
well, and I
extremes all
think
the
part
time.
of it is if you don't have a platform,
Mm,
um, because I've worked with clients that don't have platforms for their
mm,
operations, and you spend so much time getting your stuff to run an environment. Like I, the one of the clients I was working with, I spent like 80% of my time on the operation side and like 20% of my time coding because I could get it running in container in my local system, but to get it deployed in, the build was fine, but getting the deployment squared away and making sure all the um, auth systems and everything were configured properly, in getting connected to the other third party services and all of that, just was it without a platform in place to help you do those things. It is a large chunk of a person's time. And I think so if you don't have a platform that's helping you do these things, then I believe that you end up in the spot where your developers that are DevOps developers are being forced more into operations because you don't have those tools in place to streamline that process.
yeah. I mean, and think about it. Like, we're talking about the pendulum shifting. I mean, it's really ultimately goes down to like what motivates and what's the driver behind a team. And engineering and software development leaders really focus on velocity, shipping features for shipping code, and really anything else is like an abstraction. I mean, I always like to refer to this like moment. It's kind of like the aha moment for me when I was kind of building platforms. Kelsey Hightower is at KubeCon talking about YAML to the audience, and it's like, who here likes writing YAML? And none of the developers raise their hands. Like, see, operations people, no one cares. So abstract it away. So to me, like that is just kind of like when you as an engineering leader say like, oh, what's going on? It's like, what's taking so long? It's like, oh, I'm stuck making an S3 bucket. It's like, why? Like, oh, is the code done? No, that code's done. It's just S3 is not working or something. Or I don't know what settings and flags I have to put on this bucket to get it to work. And that's really why that platform exists. Can we abstract away all the implementation details from our engineers? Not because they don't understand it or they don't, they're dumb. It's just that can we abstract it away so they don't have to care about it? Like, it's if they really want to care about it, they have a spare cycle, go ahead. But I never want to hear, oh, we're delayed because the platform doesn't know how to build an S3 bucket or something, right? That's why tools like Terraform and Puppet and all that stuff kind of came about. It was kind of help solve that minutia of like, all right, how do I get a file into somewhere? How do I create a resource? How do I keep it statically defined? And that's why see the advent and rise of those tools.
Yeah, I think it's. I love how you phrased it. Like you establish kind of those golden paths, and I think that's one of the big struggles, right? When you're trying to develop these platforms for people is, and I've been on those teams, right, where you're building the common infrastructure and the common tools that other people are going to use. You're like, okay, this is the thing that everybody should do, and it's very smooth and easy, and everything works great together. And then one team's like, yeah, but we need to do this. So it's tough, right? But it's interesting the way you phrase it, like that golden path. That seems to be like the way people approach this mostly is like make the right thing to do easy to do, and that will we're developers are lazy. We're going to do the easy thing, so it's more likely you'll get adoption if you just make it very, very easy to use. So it's an interesting
Yeah,
concept.
and to build on that, it's all about automating the majority of what you do. Like if you think about most places you've worked at, or I've worked at. Look, I've worked in Java shops, I've worked in Python shops, I've worked in Go and all these shops. Focus on what the core deliverable and what the business does 90% of the time. Most of the time, a developer gets tasked with a new microservice or a new service in general. What are they writing in? Oh, we're a Go shop. All right, I'm going to make a new Go container, going to deploy the Go container Kubernetes. Figure out how to automate what 90, 80, 70, 60% of your workflow is. So then you can focus on that hard stuff, like the 40, 30, 20%, right? Because once you start focusing on that, you may actually see patterns that you didn't even think about. Oh, wow, the rest of the 20% is liquid base or database changes. Why don't we make a liquid base pipeline? All right, cool. That's another 10% of that. And then you can start seeing patterns kind of through the weeds. Get the noise out of the way so you can start focusing on those core principles that don't have maybe automations in place.
Lowering
Yeah,
our
I
impedance.
definitely never suggest starting with the special snowflake, right? And it's like it's it's a recipe for disaster because you're going to be in the weeds so much dealing with these like one-off situations that you're not going to get your major part of the bell curve, right? You're going to miss your main audience, you know.
Yeah,
We're all
and
special snowflakes, though, Aaron. All of us, every team is a snowflake.
I'm not a special snowflake. I'm too salty.
well, I also build on don't even if you're not focusing on the special snowflake and focusing on the general, don't pick the largest one either because that's also the most visible for
Yes,
successes and
right.
failures, higher
Well,
risk and
that's
Yeah.
reward. I mean, a lot of places I've been, it's very tempting. Like, oh, I'm going to start automating and DevOpsing, quote unquote, the payments API. This is going to be huge. I'm going to get so much recognition. The team is going to get a big win, and then the first pipeline failure happens, and someone says, why are we building a platform again? Like, what are you guys
Right.
doing? Like, what's the outage? Now, if you started with like that minor brand website and that caused an outage for like a few minutes, you're like, oh yeah, it was down for 5 minutes. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Kind of gets a little bit of a different perspective, right?
Well, and
mm,
managers tend to like to push those larger projects too because they see the dollar signs of, oh, if we automate this, this is where we can get the most bang for our buck, right? But it's like, no, if you slow roll it, you'll it'll work better when you get it to your big project, so you don't end up incurring costs and putting out fires. You
and if we
speaking of platforms and everything, you know what a frog's favorite platform is? Reddit. Reddit.
oh boy, wow. Oh, there we go.
When you're thinking about these platforms, like obviously you want to give them a lot of them being developers, the tools they need to get their jobs done. But how do you constrain that so that they don't have so much freedom that they can break the world?
Yeah, I mean, we just give all our developers root access. So if they no, I'm kidding.
No, I actually
No.
had an operations person say, I'm gonna make it so you can't do any work at all, and I'm never gonna touch your computer. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like I'm gonna give you root password. I'm like, oh no, you're not.
No, you ain't.
Oh no, you ain't. Nah, nah,
Plausible
nah,
No,
nah, nah.
deniability.
when you think about it as a whole, I mean, the real answer is like, yeah, look, it's a lot of risks. I mean, personally speaking, it starts with a lot of education and training, and kind of understanding as to what the platform can and can't do. Out of the box, the way we see it is we build a platform with empathy for our developers. If a developer can cause a systematic break, it's the fault of the platform, not the developer, right? I know that puts a lot of burden on those people building those platforms and those delivery teams. But that being said, like there should be some level of rigor or at least understanding of what they are going to change with that change, right? So I'll use a kind of a tangible example of like identifying IAM permissions. Maybe there's a baseline of IAM permissions that you can associate with a deployment. Like let's say I am working on a very small segment of a database, and I know that my team always needs read access to it. Great. Maybe that's a permission that could be enabled to grant and maybe even reviewed by a security team to start. Maybe it becomes a standard change in the future. But if all of a sudden you start granting like write access to a component, and you start modifying things. Now that's his perspective. Like, shouldn't there have been a check and balance? Should there maybe have been something to say, hey, can a database administrator review the proposal to move from read only to read and write? Do we know the impact that's going to happen? And I think that's kind of where you have to think about what your business lines do, because everyone's a little bit different. Some people are in NoSQL, some people are in Google, some people are in AWS. Really, you have to start thinking about what are the expected things that my platform should be able to allow you to do, and what are those kind of one-off exceptions. And then eventually, if those one-off exceptions become standard enough and there's enough maturity, you kind of start thinking about scorecards and giving people that freedom of how, all right, cool, hey, you've done this multiple times, you've done the right thing, how do we make this in a safe way? Again, not saying just give full on access to people, but in a safe way to continue to operate and again drive that velocity, because it goes back to that velocity. Engineers care about one thing: shipping features, getting things out there. Anything in that process that slows them down is just seen as a bump in the road.
Yep. And it makes it harder to estimate too, honestly, because a lot of the estimates of work that comes in falls to the development team to say, okay, yeah, we can get this done in this amount of time. And when you have that giant question mark of, I don't know how long it's going to take to deploy, um, I'm going to have to pad my estimate for that because it should work, and you have to air quote it. Um, but and you get burned a couple times, and then your estimates start going up and up because you have that fear and uncertainty of actually deploying it out into an environment that should be cookie cutter, and it's like, we're not doing anything special, but I know I'm going to have to spend 3 or 4 weeks getting that initial deployment done so that it's stable enough that our CI/CD will be able to deploy to it and not have issues on a regular basis. And so it's definitely something that I've I've done it both ways now, and I'm like, I so miss having a platform in place that that takes care of that kind of stuff for me, that doesn't allow me to um, go in and screw things up, but also gives me the tools and able to unlog jam stuff as well. Because a lot of times too, it's especially when you start talking about cloud environments, there's so many things that can kind of make your deployments not successful, especially if you're doing it repetitively. Um, an example, we were using API Gateway for that, and we ran out of VPC links on a continual basis, so we had to go in and then scrub all of our VPC links, and you can't do that if they're tied to a load balancer and all this stuff. So you'd have to go in and spend a day or two just going in, finding the load balancers, ripping them out, then clearing your VPC links, and then redeploying. And of course, deployments take 20 to 30 minutes at a time. And so if it doesn't work, then it's just like, ah. Ah.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, especially like it's actually that's actually a sign of maturity when like whenever I'm implementing a platform in a new organization, like that's actually one of the signs that I look for. Typically when I arrive, everyone's talking about deployment windows, and I say arriving is like kind of joining a new organization. Everyone's like, oh yeah, Tuesday night at 9 to 10 o'clock, we're going to be doing this change. When announcing that's fine, but when people stop debating the time and how long, and people start talking about the impact and the change itself more so than the time, the physical time, that's usually a sign of maturity for me. So when people just start talking about like, hey, we're rolling out the new patient check-in experience, and that's going to deliver so much value, da 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 da. When you start talking about that versus like, oh, how long? Oh, duh, it's a platform. It's gonna take 5 minutes. Like, it's like, any questions on it? Oh, no, no. Okay, cool. Next. That's usually a sign of like maturity in my view.
Yeah, and I've worked in those environments before, and it's so nice to have the right tools in place for that. It's a game changer.
Yeah.
It's because working without it is kind of like, it's like going to the dentist. You just dread it. And um
Yeah.
well, which, speaking of dentistry, the one of the major things that the Aspen Group does is dentistry, isn't it?
Yeah, we have Aspen Dental as kind of one of our larger brands under the parent umbrella. So if you are a customer, thank you so much for visiting, and always appreciate your business.
Don't
And
forget
hopefully
your
making you
candy.
smile a little bit, not as
Yeah.
scary as dentist.
Don't forget the candy on, Valentine's Day is coming up and Easter and all that. Yeah, get lots of candy. That's yeah.
We'll check out for cavities any day
That's right.
afterwards.
That's right.
Yeah, it's like, I would, you always know if you've got like the ambulance chaser dentist in your neighborhood because they're handing out things like frozen Heath bars and and giving the kids like hockey pucks. Hockey players are a
Oh,
dentist's best friend.
that's a good idea. Yeah, I never thought of it. You're a hockey guy. That's a good one.
It's like the guy that goes in and always makes sure he writes one bug for every 10 stories.
Nice job
Job
security, right?
security, yeah.
Yeah. So we didn't really talk about it much, Joel, but like what has your career path been like? How did you get to doing this thing that you're doing now, and even like at the Aspen Group? Like what would that look like? What was your journey like?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'll just start really early and kind of brief, but like, I started off as like a systems engineer and then became an applications engineer early as like my career. And in both places, I kind of just recognized I'm like, man, there's just got to be a better way. So we did things like Puppet, we did things like Chef, we did Ansible, right? We automated application rollouts with that stuff, but it still was so manual. Like it felt like there always was some cog in the wheel, and the more important thing was it still felt like I was just getting poop thrown at me by developers. So it's like there has to be a better way where we kind of work together and bridge that gap. So at my time at GoGo, we built a lot of these automation platforms. We used a tool called Spinnaker from at the time Netflix, and now it's an open source tool. But now the industry is all Kubernetes, so we're looking at things like Argo CD, and that's kind of our focus right now at the Tag Group. We're moving to Argo CD, looking at how to continue that platform experience. Again, developers shouldn't care whether we're using Argo, Jenkins, GitLab, Azure, DevOps, whatever, as long as the platform kind of builds that experience where they can just commit code and focus on ultimately what they're delivering and building. That's really what the experience we're trying to build out here.
How do you like Argo so far?
It's good. It's come a long way since I've had it. For me, the big thing for me is shifting from like a tool like Spinnaker, which focused very much on pipeline delivery and software
Hmm.
rollouts in a pipeline, to GitOps. It is a little bit of a shift, but there's a lot of awesome things kind of with Argo events, Argo rollouts. A lot of the stuff that I had an issue with Argo early on in the project are getting resolved, and now I think that's why you're seeing such a mass adoption. I don't know about y'all, but it seems like everyone's building either an extension or building on Argo, which is great to see. And the beauty of it is the CNCF and all the Kubernetes community is basically behind it right now. So far, we're really liking it. We're liking what we see, keeping things in sync with a repo. It's almost like, think of it as like a continuous Terraform apply running against your cluster to make sure that things are the way you described that they should be, which is, as an operations person, awesome.
Yeah, I really liked it how that and I think it's interesting. Like for early on, when it comes to those like more pull based, here's
Yep.
declarative, a little more pull based model, I was using Flux, and I did like Flux. I thought Flux was really cool. But yeah, Argo, it seems like it's kind of one out. Is that kind of the where everybody's at in the CNCF cloud native
I mean,
computing
I wouldn't
foundation?
say I again, like being on a podcast and recognizing I'm saying recommendations. Like I would say like never, no one should ever be ashamed as to what they do and pick. But I think like Argo right now to me is kind of the popular favorite. But I mean, at the same time, like again, it goes back to some early meetups I've had when we are talking and people are describing the perfect architecture. Don't just look at what other people have. Look at what you have and how to enhance it, and if there is a need to move to things like Argo or to move to things off the Flux or whatever, pick the tool that works for y'all. Like, because at the end of the day, that's the biggest thing: operational support. Because you don't want to like be stuck in kind of the situation where you're, I don't know, kind of between tools and you don't know how to maintain it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the one thing I liked about Flux, and it was a native feature of Flux that's not in Argo, at least not yet. I think it's like a lab or something like that. Is the whole notion of like when I deploy a new version of my container image, it scans the container image repository, and if it sees there's a change, it'll go change my manifest for me in Flux. It would do that automatically, but Argo doesn't have that. At least not the version I was using when we installed it. It
Yeah,
didn't do that
at
natively.
KubeCon, I forgot what it's called. They announced there is something in kind of the works for to do that now. I forgot. It's like the event notifier. It's
Yeah,
definitely there was a KubeCon talk this year. I remember seeing it,
yeah.
but definitely check it out if you haven't.
Okay, yeah, that was a really cool feature. I like that. I thought that was really nice because right now we have to kind of like script it. I mean, we were even using like said or an awk or something in our scripts. Yeah, we are to update our manifest. But I do like Argo. Now, do you use the UI?
Yeah, we still use the UI right now, so to kind of keep things in sync, it's really helpful. I mean, I wouldn't say you should do all your operations in there. You should definitely use things like your Git repos and stuff like that. But I think the nice thing about it is the visual tier. Look, I'm going to be completely honest. Kubernetes is new to the Aspen Group. I have engineers learning Kubernetes for the first time. We're not perfect. Um, Again, I'm never going to fault someone for not knowing the kubectl command exactly and not knowing that to do dash all namespaces and stuff, right? I would much rather people learn, grow, and then figure out, oh, I don't need the UI anymore. I can take the training wheels off. Give me the command line, you know?
Yeah, I like the visualization that it gives you too of like your entire deployment of everything that's out there, how it's linked together and all that. And I
Hmm.
think it's really nice. So,
I
not that I
think
want to make this an Argo
United Airlines
podcast.
or American Airlines, one of them built actually a pretty cool. It was the KubeCon prior. They were actually talking about building components inside of Argo's UI. It was actually pretty nifty. So think about like extending things like after you deploy, you could also get like a Grafana dashboard, for lack of a better explanation, along with it. It was just kind of like an external dependency being mapped inside of your Argo UI, which I think was again pretty nifty to see.
That is cool.
Yeah, I love a good UI around that kind of stuff because the CTL commands are different for everything, and it's just there's definitely a learning curve, especially if you have to work in mixed environments where you've got Docker for some stuff and cubes for another, and it can get confusing. It's like, okay, was that a GitHub command or was that a cube command? Was that
Hmm.
a
Yeah.
Docker command? How do I do that Docker command again? And it's just like you almost have to have like a playbook of different things. I I think there used to be a book called like maybe it was an O'Reilly series. Those they're like playbooks or recipes. They call them
Yep.
recipes.
Yeah,
Recipes.
recipes and
Yep.
cookbooks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, recipes and cookbooks. That's right. Um, and those were the best because you're like, oh, what was that community? Back when we actually used, paper books.
I still like it. Hey, and don't,
I
don't
do
don't fault
too.
me for it. I love getting a nice paper book, sitting down on the couch. I don't know, like the Kindle. I know is lighter, but I don't know. Just call me an addict for the way this page sounds or smells when you turn it. It's like it's great.
It's the tactile feel of the page. It just there's
Yeah.
something comforting about it. I'm kind of the
Hmm.
same way. It's like in my bookcase behind me, I have all kinds of different books. I just like, am I going to use them? Maybe, maybe not. But I like having them. It's a comfort thing.
You
It's
know,
like,
honestly, to me, someone described it as almost like an encyclopedia of your life. Because when you
yeah,
look at your shelf, you could probably see like, I remember when I opened that book. Wow, that was 20
Hmm.
years ago.
Oh yeah.
Like, or I remember that book that was 10 years ago, and you kind of start building like a portfolio of how you got to where you're at. So I like it for that. At least to me, when I pull up a Kindle, I'm like, I'm not just swiping through like 1,000 books. I'm looking at like my life basically, things I've used or learned over time.
That's cool. It's a cool way to think about it. That
Yeah.
the stories you read tell the story of you. That's cool.
Hmm.
So the one thing I know we mentioned, we touched on it a little bit, but like, and one of the things that's really cool about this podcast is we interview people from like all over the place, like a bunch of different domains and stuff. You mentioned dentistry. I know you all have some other brands, but like, is there anything like that you would consider to be very unique about what you do because of the domain you work in that might interesting challenges that you have to face, that anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about like Tag right now is that we're basically kind of overseeing multiple brands, and those brands are unique. That we don't just have a ton of dentistry brands. I mean, we do have things tangentially aligned to it, like Clear Choice for dentures and dental implants and stuff like that. But we also have brands such as like chapter for beauticians and like things like Botox and stuff like that. We also have a brand for dogs and vets. We have a called Love It. So basically a new vet brand that we're trying to expand. And ultimately, we have things like urgent care. Hey, ERs are getting expensive nowadays, and sometimes they can't even see you on time. Like, if you just need something quick checked out, we're there for you too. So it's actually pretty cool to see. That being said, as you can imagine, we just talked about like 5 different industries in one. The context switching is not only challenging, but it's also rewarding. You're kind of working on multiple business lines, but you're also not rebuilding a platform for everybody. You're if you do it right, you build a platform that can support everybody, and that
Sure.
to me and my team, I think we really value the opportunity to have a chance to do that. It's kind of cool. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, we had a guest on recently, Erica from the Yum brands. They have a similar idea. Like they have multiple brands under one roof, and she came at it from more of a uh, user experience perspective, from from a visual perspective for the users. But you're coming in from like a platform, but she had the same sort of experience. There was a lot of things that are cross brands. There's things that are unique, of course, they have to be, but you are able to get a lot of bang for the buck, and commonality among all the different brands, and be able to support them, and you don't have to fork everything 7 different times or whatever.
And health aside, I mean, lessons learned. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, Aspen Dental being our largest brand, there's a lot of lessons learned. We have hundreds of millions of patients, right? Versus like something maybe a smaller brand. Love It's a brand new brand. We're starting to grow our footprint. It was formerly called AZ Pet Vet. It was only in Arizona. Now we're starting to talk about national scale potentially. The lessons that we learned trying to scale one business line is almost the same. I mean, not exactly the same. Again, very unique, but a website's a website, a login is a login, a patient's a patient. Even though they may have fur and 4 legs, they, they are, as very much a patient. We respect our patients, and we want to make sure we do the same things, even if it's data security for a dog. I mean, I think we would probably all not care if our dog's gender was leaked on the internet or something like that. But at the end of the day,
Oof.
we want to keep that same level of rigor regardless, right? It's with personal data that we want to make sure we protect and our customers
Yeah, I
trust
mean,
us.
if a dog's personal information gets out there, it's rough.
Wow.
Oh no.
Well done. Well done. Wow. Rough. Okay, just let
It's
that one
rough.
soak in, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, let that one just marinate on that one for a little bit. Yeah. Well done.
Well, and
Fantastic.
that, the with the idea of a platform is exactly that, though. It's something that's supposed to be more generic, that fits a lot of different um, inputs, right? It's supposed to be kind of the template for how you're going to do things, and because we've always talked to, because there was this pendulum swing, back when we were doing software platforms, that it's like, oh, well, we don't want to create a platform for everything. Well, yeah, right, because then it's not a platform, it's just another application, right? So you want platforms for your major groupings of things, like brands or domains or something like that. So if I'm in this domain, I should be able to use a platform for that, and maybe take that as the starting point for a platform for another domain, and reuse a lot of that.
And I'd even argue that there's even like this concept of platforms for like the hardware and software components. I mean, we talked about it earlier with the TVs, or sorry, the fridges and stuff. Do we really think Samsung just rolls out updates and doesn't have a monitor as to how that update's going, or are they just going to brick a million fridges and just refund everybody? Right? There's that
It's not.
definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess maybe I should be careful. I didn't look at recalls lately, but at the same time, I'm sure there's some level of rigor as to how that hardware is updated and monitored. I mean, even in our industry, like the other day we were talking about the air compressors and stuff for our drills for in the dentist office. Like, oh, what are you going to monitor the air? Yeah, you can technically. I guess the vendor actually sells a monitoring component for the air and the compressors and all that stuff that we can remotely monitor all our offices. And we're like, oh, uh, I'm sorry. Let's do that. So like we're always trying to like make things better, even if it's hardware, right? That experience, and again, different audience. That's completely different audience. That's, you're talking physical installations and stuff. But to even get that visibility and that level of into like a common platform, you start thinking about things differently.
You could actually use that as a marketing tool too. Is like, you probably don't want to go to this dentist. He's drill happy.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
Much more error going on over
yeah,
there.
there's we notice that drill being used a lot out of this dentist office.
But
Because they're
that's
so good and they're the
yeah.
best in the
yes,
world. No.
yes.
It's for some reason it's always towards the end of the year when your deductible's about to wear out. You know what I mean?
Right.
You've already spent your deductible. And interesting how that works. So that's like kind of a predictive maintenance thing, right? So you would be able to monitor the
Yeah, I
locations.
mean, it's no different. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about being proactive. How do I word this? Like, we all like to bash our ISPs, right, and say like how much it stinks. But have anyone like really opened an ISP ticket lately? It's pretty impressive. Even the electrical grid, like. I've gotten outages from ComEd before I knew that there was an outage and then it hit me. And or the ComEd being the Central Chicago internet electrical company.
Hmm.
And when you can go to like a website and see a status map, and they actually have like a marker as to what areas are impacted, and you're like, this is awesome. Like, I mean, I'm still upset that I can't like cook my food or something, but at the same time, I'm like, wow, I actually know what's going on. I'm not just calling 1-800 numbers 24/7 asking for a status update. At least as a customer, I feel like there's a little bit more rigor and they care about me. And I think that's the same thing we try to do with what we build with our platforms and observability strategy. We want people, our dentists, our customers, to feel like, hey, we do care about you. We recognize things break all the time, but it still sucks that you're impacted by this.
And for those playing along at home, ISP stands for Internet Service Provider, which I actually have. I almost submitted a ticket just a few weeks ago. They went through and they kind of bricked our internet for a little while, and that was it was a problem. But they were doing hardware upgrades, and so it's kind of one of those things. Is like, well, if they're coming through and updating stuff, it's a little hard to have uptime.
Never
Um,
mess with a tech guy's internet. We know the ping and latency.
Oh, well,
Hmm.
especially when you work remote, right? It's like, well,
Yeah.
there's my lifeline. I was in working off a hotspot, just, oof, it's rough. I could do it, but don't expect video on my calls, right?
So when you have a setup like you guys do, where you have like multiple satellite offices and all of them, not like that's primarily your locations are all over the place, right? So that that's a different level of support. You kind of have to. It can't be like the dentist office. We have a server go out, or we have an outage in the data center that now that dentist office can't take care of patients. You have to kind of be in that offline mode, so to speak. Do you guys? Is that a challenge for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, look, the company's now 26, I think 26 years old at this year. Like the company's been around for a long time. There's definitely a lot of things that they've learned over the years, and there's a lot of fallback processes. I mean, like, think about 26 years ago, none of this platform engineering knew how existed, right? So there were papers and faxes and stuff like that. So there's always like a way of keeping the lights on. That being said, the burden always comes in reconciling that. Oh, now we have to process all these faxes that were done manually, or these signed paper documents, right? We never want to be in that position because that's burden, that's time. I mean, I would hate to be the person in that situation, but I think as we kind of go, we start thinking about, all right, well, what's the level of severity that we're at, and I think establishing those principles are big. I mean, even outside of healthcare, I mean, I encourage that everyone think about that. Like, everything is going to be a P1. I get it. Everyone thinks that everything's an issue, a number one issue. But really, as you start maturing, you start thinking about, well, how much do I have to have on this? Do I need everyone in the company handling this issue right now? Can I have one senior engineer working on this? Do I need to hire an external vendor like a power expert to go out to that office? And that's like something that's out of our control. We don't have expertise in house. It's someone crashed into a light pole. We got to go call a 1-800 number to someone to fix it. And that's some of the challenges. There are things that are just outside of your control. Hey, someone crashed into a power converter and now your office is offline. Hey, guess what? You're out, but also Starbucks and the Ulta Beauty is next to you is out too, right? Or something like that. So you got to start thinking about stuff that too.
We were brainstorming that kind of catastrophic event recovery type of conversation, and we had some sales folks in the room too, because they've they get calls from customers out in the field, and one of them was like, it'd be great if we could get notified if the power goes out. I'm like, um, what's gonna send that email?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, yeah. But you know, it's that kind of thing. It's like sometimes you just there's not a software solution for what it is that you're dealing with. Sometimes it has to be boots on the ground,
Yeah, or sometimes you have to develop it, right? Like, I mean,
right?
in certain cases, like, all right, well, we know the office is going to be offline, so their phoning home is not going to be possible. But do I have a monitor from home to phone too, right? Like,
Yep.
so if all of a sudden I start seeing, hey, the entire East Coast is offline. Oh, yeah, there's a major hurricane kind of ramping up the kind of coastline. That's what's going on. So,
To be expected.
hmm
Not like the East Coast power grid failure. It's like, yeah, well, we're not gonna be expecting anything working over there for a little bit.
Bit of a dark
Yeah,
spot
let's
right
just say
Yeah.
now.
that not many people were going to get their teeth cleaned during a major hurricane.
Yeah. Well, I've got the windows all boarded up, so now it's time to go get a crown.
It's a perfect time for that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think it's time for our next section, James.
Ship or skip, everybody we gotta tell us if you ship or skip.
Yes. Ship it or skip it. So, ship it or skip it works like this. We're going to throw out a topic, and we'll go around the room. Everybody will give their idea, their opinion on whether it should be a ship it, which means it's a good idea. Yes, keep this around, or skip it. No, we don't need to be doing that kind of stuff, or we need to get rid of it, or phase it out, whatever. So the first one is build your own platform.
Ooh, who wants to start?
No, you can start.
Um, this is I think you should ship it. You should ship it. Well, let me rephrase this. I think you should skip it because there's a lot of established solutions out there that are coming about, and especially if you don't know what it takes to build a platform, you definitely want to have some expertise of people that are supporting other companies to do it. That being said, if you have a significant staff that already can do it, um, you should probably build it yourself because you're going to know your business lines. That being said, the happy path of finding the platforms, I've seen many companies like Port or something like that out there, which support many different data models. So you can build that custom experience to kind of get a custom platform. So I think it's a little bit of both. So I hate to kind of give it a 50-50 on this one, but I think you have to know what platform, what you're building. I mean, isn't a vendor in the world that understands your business better than you.
Hmm. I'm going to be more towards the skip it with the idea, similar vein of thought. It's like you want to leverage what you can get off the shelf to the best ability, but most of the stuff is customizable to the point where if you can find a solution for your platform that allows you the freedom to integrate it and customize it the way you need to, I think that's going to be better. And for the same reasons that you do need to have a team that knows your domain in there so that they can integrate it and customize it properly for you. So there's still going to be a bit of a build in there, but I think that square one would be the purchase something and then mold it into your domain.
Yeah, some of this is for me. It's like a temporal answer. So, like, if you asked me 5 years ago, I'd say absolutely ship it, build your own. There's not enough mature products out there that do this the way you would need it. But now I think maybe the opposite is true. But I would also maybe put another axis in there and say, like, it depends on the maturity of what you're building. If you're really dealing with some gnarly, nasty legacy stuff that's all it is snowflakes, Yeah, a platform that's built for more like cloud native solutions from the get go probably isn't going to fit like a glove for you. You're probably going to need to go custom until you get yourself more migrated to be more cloud native, and you've lifted and shifted or rewritten some of those things, and then those platforms would be a little more of a good fit. I don't know. I'm a little half and half, I guess, myself.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Legacy systems are generally snowflakes because they didn't have a platform to work off of to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would put the footnote on there that not intended for legacy systems, right?
Or writing it yourself is not intended for mature audiences, right?
Right. It's kind of the opposite of the. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, our next one that we were talking about, the term cube cuddle instead of cube CTL.
There was actually a round of this at KubeCon. I mean, look, for me, I think I skip it. I say Cube CTL, Cube Control. I'll accept too. I mean, look, I'm a Linux guy. I'm a systems admin guy. System CTL, system control, right? Think about the old Unix days, right? That's really what it is. Cube Cuddle is cute. I love it, but not. I'm skipping that. Sorry.
Aaron's shaking his head. You guys can't see it, but I can hear it.
Yeah. I'm totally a skipping on this one. I'm sorry if I'm talking to somebody outside of the tech domain, going, "Oh, what have you been working on?" I've been working on Cube Cuddle. They're gonna think I'm, I need sensitivity training or something like that. It's just like, no, I'm not. I'm not throwing that in my vocabulary. I'm sorry. It's hard enough to get people to understand what it is I do for a living. I don't need to add something confusing like cube cuddle. It's like, oh, yeah, that's all right. We're gonna keep an eye on this guy. End up on a list somewhere. No, skip it. Absolutely skip
That
cube
guy over there
cuddle.
with the Care Bears T-shirt on and the neck beard. That's a
No.
little weird. No, kidding.
Grief.
I've used Cube Cuddle. That's just what I say. I don't know that I'm necessarily for it. I don't. It seems a little absurd to say cuddle, because we think of what we do as very hard, like a hard
It's a
thing of what
manly
we do.
job.
Not difficult, but it's like
Oh my
it's so
God.
manually that we sit at a keyboard and peck away at these keys. It's tough to depress them.
I
That like
have
3
calluses on all
millimeters.
my fingertips.
Yeah,
I type with
exactly.
aggression.
That's right.
Now will be very interesting to see as your viewership after this. Like, oh, these guys, these folks call it CTL. That's it. I'm out of here.
That's
Like,
right. Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, have fun with it. Like, I get it. Like, I Cube CTL, Cube Cuddle. I've been guilty of saying it too. I think, like, for me, it's just always been Cube CTL or Cube Control. Like, I mean, that's a little bit of a stretch, but Cube CTL for me.
Well, I am the beautiful co-host, so it would make sense that
Yeah,
I use
everybody
Cube
wants
Cuddle.
to cube cuddle, James.
Yes,
So
that's why we don't go video with our podcast. We're staying audio only. We'll
that sounds like
my...
HR points in a cubicle. Is no, I can't do it. I can't do it.
All right. What about this? This one's an interesting one for the community, for the Kubernetes world, Kubernetes, however you say it. Cloud Foundry, ship it or skip it.
Oh, I've never used it, so I feel like I shouldn't comment on it. So I'm gonna say skip it for now, with the unintended bias that I have never used it. But that being said, I'm sure someone has used it. So who has used it?
Well, James and I both used it at the same place.
Yeah.
And and I was there from the the homegrown solution, and then also the transition after Cloud Foundry. I think it really depends on where you are on that maturity curve, like we were talking about before. If you're on that maturity curve of where you can build it yourself, and you're more on that end of the spectrum, I think you probably don't need something like Cloud Foundry in place. I didn't mind it though, so I think I'm really on the fence on that one, because I really liked our homegrown solution. I thought it was very easy and intuitive. The Cloud Foundry stuff was a little bit more so.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
fair. Yeah. I liked Cloud Foundry a lot. I think it definitely influenced some changes in the Kubernetes world to a degree. One of the things I miss, and there are some efforts out there. I forget what the standards are off the top of my head, or the packages or whatever they're called. But like one thing about Cloud Foundry was like if you want to connect to a database, you would stand up your database connector, and then it would inject the connection information into your environment in a standardized way. So if I want to start up my Java application or Spring application, it would understand and know that standard metadata or that standard connection data format. So it would pull it from the environment automatically. Whereas now you kind of have to roll that. Okay, I'm going to do DB_pass and make it up as I go along. That was kind of cool. That standardization was really neat. And it wasn't just for databases. It was for kind of all of the things you would need to connect to. There was kind of a standard for how that connection info would get injected into your environment. I thought that was kind of cool. The other thing that came out of that was like, and I don't know that it was Heroku and Cloud Foundry, kind of the build packs thing that came out of those platforms as a service kind of thing. So I thought that was cool, and I love how I'm a Java guy. I love how we build our apps now with our containers using build packs. I think that's a really, really nice and streamlined way to go about that.
I will say that I did love working with the Pivotal team. They were a great team to work with. So
I think like from what I've from what I loosely gather, again, me not having ever used it, so sorry folks who love Cloud Foundry. I think it basically gives you like a prescribed way of making like essentially like you said it, like Heroku app or like a 12-factor app. It tells you how to do it. So I'm not going to discredit it because I know everyone's on a different maturity cycle. But I the way I see it is like almost with Kubernetes, you're expected to build that. With Cloud Foundry, it gives you a prescribed way of doing it. But to be honest, both ways are actually fine. I mean, some places like you're a small shop, do it the pretty automated way. You don't have time to. You only a 1-person, 2-person team. You don't have time for it. But if you have like a large team, like that can maintain and knows the maturity cycle, and also don't be fooled by the lack of maturity you need to run these systems. I mean, Kubernetes, it isn't just one engineer knowing kubectl, and knowing how to deploy things manually, right? There's a whole level of maturity that comes out of it. On that note of 12-factor, actually at KubeCon this year, they announced that 12-factor's methodology is now open source. I'm actually a part of the Discord where they're actually like starting to add things like that are more modern. So I think one of the big ones lately that's been coming up has been identity into the 12-factor stack.
Nice.
That's the missing component. Or config management, remote config management, like how to add concepts to that. So just giving that a plug in case anyone's interested in 12-factor. It is getting some love in 2025.
So is it going to be 14-factor, or are they doing like brick in,
I don't know.
brick out? Like let's throw out one of the old ones and put in a new. Like
That's a good question. I don't know what happens to 12-factor after 12-factor. So
they add more stuff, more factors.
Make it prime, make it 13.
Yeah,
13-factor. All right, I think that's good for ship it or skip it. So now we'll go into our final segment of the podcast, the infamous lightning round.
It's time for the lightning round. Rapid fire, don't slow down. Answer quick and make it count. In this game, there's no way out.
So the way the lightning round works is James and I are going to rapid fire some very serious, hard hitting topical questions at you, and we will do this in an alternating fashion, back and forth. It'll be 10 questions. Hopefully, can make it to the end. So far, I think we've only had one person that's passed out. No,
Was
maybe
that
not.
was that a was that a stroke or what? Did they pass out? What
Maybe
was
it was
that?
a stroke. I
It
don't
might have
know.
been a
I just
stroke.
heard poof.
Yeah,
Like a flash of lightning, they were gone.
that's right.
No, in all seriousness, these are a bunch of they are rapid fire questions. Please keep your answers short. No explanation is needed unless provoked.
All right.
Sometimes we'll be like, "What?"
Yeah, are these like yes no questions or?
Nope. These
Okay.
are short answer or single word responses.
All right.
So, James, you want to kick us off with the lightning round?
Yes, I can be, counted on to do the real hard hitting questions. Like, how do you feel about cranberries?
I like them. I think they're pretty good. I think they have just the right amount of tart. The one thing I don't like is the aftertaste.
Hmm. We would have also accepted no.
Is that your answer?
Either way.
What's the type of triangle with two equal sides called?
Oh snap! Now you're making me think about geometry. Not isosceles. No, isosceles. Isosceles.
We would
Is that
also
right?
accept equilateral because technically two sides are equal.
Yes, that would
Oh
be.
my god.
Yeah.
Math nerd. It's right here.
Yes. If you were given, no, that's probably not a good question. Have you ever tasted soap
On purpose?
at all?
I accidentally, yeah. I don't think I go around eating soap bars. I was unfortunately not on the Tide Pod craze.
Oh, that's the best answer to that one I've heard yet. Nope, I didn't do the Tide Pod craze. Would you eat a day-old taquito from 7-Eleven, though?
When wouldn't I? Of course. Sometimes it's the best. It's the perfect amount of crunch. Nothing like making you taste regret after a night out.
Taste regret. I love it.
Most embarrassing store you might be seen shopping at?
You know what? Yeah, like Ulta. I like to I sometimes have to buy like clippers for my hair and stuff. So it's like a beauty like makeup and stuff. It's like, oh, what are you doing buying like it's like I'm buying like clippers and stuff or Sally's Beauty. It's like a beauty supply store.
Oh, Sally's Beauty. That's a good one. Yeah, I look at that place going, yeah, that's probably not a place I want to be caught in.
I mean, I do have hair. I'm actually growing it out right now to see if I am balding or not. But fortunately, I do have some hair left, which is great.
Oh, that ship sailed for me many, many years ago. But all I have is daughters, so I'm well past the being weird about being in Ulta. Like I have to go
Yeah,
there.
you can still go to Ulta and get a wig or something.
Yeah.
There you go. Oh, I would love to see James in a wig. That would be great. What's a country you'd be okay never visiting in your life?
Oh man. I forgot what this country's called. It's like, oh, you know what? It's actually part of Canada, but it's not really Canada. It's like called Baffin Island. I actually went there once on a test flight to test the coldest the airplanes in cold weather. It was cold. Like I'm from Chicago, and it was freaking cold. And so I'd be okay. Never, not a country. It's like I don't know, a province or whatever. Baffin Island, and I'd be okay never going back to.
I think
It's
we
way
need
too
to hear
cold.
this
Sorry
story
if
about
anyone from Baffin Island is listening to this.
test flight for.
In-flight
why
Wi-Fi.
were you
We were
doing
testing the antennas to see like how our
Oh, go-go.
Wi-Fi
Okay.
systems are working at GoGo.
I
Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Go.
No. While we're drilling teeth, we're seeing how in the
Does it-
plane.
Yeah, we don't even need
I'm
an
a pilot,
anesthesia.
right? Well, you must fly.
We
It's
need
so
some anesthetic
cold.
for this one.
Yeah, it's so cold. We don't even need to knock you out for this.
Yeah.
All right, this might. I don't know. Maybe this one will work or not. If Tupac appeared before you right now, what's the first thing you would ask him?
Oh man, this is a good one. What does he think about the current state of the rap between Drake and Kendrick Lamar? And is Kendrick Lamar really his reincarnation, as he claims to be?
Oh,
It's
that
like a
was a much
joke,
better
like it's
answer.
kind of like a thing. So that'd be kind of a
Yeah,
cool one to see.
I like it. That's a
But
much
now you
better
got to ask:
answer.
is this the hologram Tupac or the real
Oh, yeah,
Tupac?
that's right. Hologram
Because they
is
did
he's making a
hologram
splash.
Tupac.
Yeah. Your turn.
Well, yeah, I'm still thinking about the hologram Tupac. I'm just like, oh, black beans or
At the
refried
time,
beans in your burrito.
oh man, I love me some refried beans outside the burrito, but I think in the burrito I like black beans. It's weird. It's kind of like a handy dooley or whatever. Like they love tomatoes, but they hate ketchup. How do you think that is? It's like I love black beans in the tomato in the burrito, but outside refried beans with rice. Oh, it's so good. It's like the gravy on a turkey for Mexican food.
All right. Um, do you Instagram your food?
100%. The camera eats first.
Uh,
Oh, okay. When eating a formal meal with multiple forks, do you start from the outside or the inside?
I plead the fifth. No, I start on the outside. Outside in, I think, is the way it goes. I forget though. It's a
Yes,
big
that is
I
little.
think
correct.
is it
There you go.
outside in? I thought it was
Yes.
inside out.
Nope. It's outside in.
I
Salad
don't know
fork, dinner
about that.
fork, and then dessert fork
We're
above the
looking
plate.
this up.
All right, I've been
Or
doing it
shrimp
right my
fork.
whole life.
It depends on how many forks you have, but yes, it's outside in.
We don't do that stuff in Kentucky.
If, do you eat forks?
Forks, like, come on. Are you kidding me?
We just eat with our hands.
You're lucky I got shoes on. What are you kidding?
That's why Kentucky Fried Chicken's finger are looking good, because we don't use forks.
That's where they got their slogan, right?
Yep.
Although, who eats chicken with a fork and a knife anyway? Like, come on, fried chicken? That's a handful.
Oh my gosh, I grew up. So obviously, I had a very etiquette-based upbringing, and it was, yeah, watching somebody try and eat chicken off the bone with a knife and fork is painful. It's just, I'm like, really? Just really? It's too animalistic to pick it up. I'm like, oh my gosh, you take this way too seriously. I think that was the
Was that
final
it?
question of the lightning round.
Did I make it?
You made it.
You
You're
passed,
still
yeah.
conscious.
Hey!
Yeah.
You still have a pulse.
This is still
Yeah,
real
it was
life.
fun.
Yes.
You've been struck by lightning and survived.
Woohoo.
So, Joel, do you have any final closing thoughts or predictions for the new year on platform engineering?
Yeah, I think generative AI. No, I'm kidding. I think generative AI is going to definitely be something that is going to get some focus. Obviously, as we're in the industry, we can't even dodge it on our personal lives, let alone in our professional lives. But I think really, it's. I think we're going to start seeing taking the platform engineering to those ultimate platforms, alternative platforms. It's not just going to be building it for one thing anymore. It's not just going to be for Kubernetes. It's evolving platform engineering as a whole for a different business lines and things like that. So I think that's going to be kind of the focus of 2025. I see a lot of obviously AI, but I think a lot of focus in hybrid multi-cloud environments.
Yeah, and looking back at our previous episode, we did predict that platform engineering was going to be big in 2025, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. And here I am.
I know it was on my list of or maybe it was a shipper or skipper that I talked about platform engineering. I think it's an absolute must-have, and will be as we add more ways your code can go. I do see a need for being able to write code once and have it go multiple places.
Well, I mean, using the Gen AI example, right? I mean, look at what's going on right now. We're basically making AI kind of somewhat of a commodity. We're asking different models, different languages, and really what's turning into is, oh, that one's better for reasoning, and that one's better for
Mhm.
mathematics, and that one's better for this. And now we're starting to see like these worlds of multiple models being used for different things. So it's almost like just like we're talking about building commodity and like, hey, whatever we get, we're going to be able to figure out what kind of figure that path out.
What about? I know you're involved a lot in the local tech scene there in Chicago. Any or anything else you wanted to? Anything you wanted to plug or share with folks?
Or
Yeah, I
give
mean,
a
look,
shout out to anybody.
Oh yeah, sure.
I'll give a shout out to my local Chicagoland community. So all the Chicago meetups are great. We every year we do a Windy City Dev Fest. So be on the lookout for that for 2025. It's kind of I don't know how to describe it. Pandemic kind of changed a lot of in-person meetups. So what we did in 2023 was we just basically reached out to like 12, 15 different meetups, and we said, hey, we got a venue. And we have 12 rooms. You want to just run a giant meetup? And it was like the most disorganized, awesome hack fest I've ever seen. We had people with Python, data engineers, Ruby engineers. I was like, people were going to talks that they probably never in their life would have attended. And out of it, the positive experience was like, this is great. I just got to meet a lot of people that are actually working in the industry in Chicago. Remember that, hey, despite us working in different industries, we're all the world's small and so is the city. So support your local Chicagoland community, support your local city communities, not just Chicago, and focus on that. I mean, I think that's what, at least to me, gets me motivated, excited, and make your city great. That's just be a good person now overall.
Nice. When is the Dev Fest this year?
The last one nearly got the best of me with how short of a plan we had. We planned it in less than a month, and we turned it around pretty well at the Google office.
Nice.
But we usually do it like September, October-ish around there. But we'll probably announce it sometime in July, June, maybe a little bit earlier this year.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I spoke at the Chicago Java user group, and it's a good town, man. I hadn't been to Chicago in a while, and I got to get out and see the city. My dog is barking at me here, but yeah, it was a good town. I really enjoyed it. Chicago's a great town.
Yeah. The Java user group, the Kotlin user group. I mean, the Mary and crew are doing a great thing over here in Chicago. So definitely props to them. They're doing some awesome stuff. I love it. I love working with them too. And then ultimately, I'd just like to give a shout out to the Aspen Group. If you're ever looking for a career opportunity, based out of Chicago, based out of Syracuse, we're always looking for great engineers. Specifically, I'm looking for SRE and delivery engineers. So if anything I talked about is exciting, check us out, and we'd love to have you join us aboard.
All right. So with that, I will wrap this episode up. That concludes this episode of the / where we lean into the future of IT. I'd like to thank our guest, Joel Vasallo, for talking with us about platform engineering. I'd also like to thank my beautiful co-host, James, and all of our production staff that make this podcast possible. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast for future episodes, and if you'd like to reach us at the / or have questions or needs for platform engineering, you can email us at the / at calibrity.com. I'm Aaron Chesney. Thank you, and stay curious.